you figure out where you're going if you're not usually coming to campus. Want to let all of you know that I am recording what we're talking about today, so there's an iPad going in the back. Don't freak out, but I'm sure you're going to record it. Just because we've got at least one person who's from out of state, which just wasn't going to be possible to be able to get here today, so I'm recording the lecture. I'm Rob Shapiro. Thank you very much for coming in on a Saturday. And I want to let all of you know that when I was reminding my wife that I was going to be teaching this Saturday, she looked at me and she said, "You're that professor." I said, what are you talking about? She said, "It's a long weekend, and you've got class on a long weekend." I'm sorry. It didn't occur to me when I scheduled the class to do a long weekend. In deference to that, my goal is, you probably saw on Blackboard that we're scheduled to go 9 until 12. My goal for today is I want to really talk a lot about the development of objectives and teaching protocols assignment, okay? And what I've got is, we're going to do some revisions to the way that it's set up on Blackboard, but I've got packets that I'm going to give to all of you that sort of outlines how we can go about doing this assignment. I want to spend a little bit of time, we'll see how long it takes. In my mind's eye, it maybe takes an hour, and we'll see if it takes a little more, it takes a little less, going over this packet with you guys, talking about what my expectations are for the assignment. Then at that point, I'll close my eyes or I'll walk out of the room for a little while, and if you decide, I'm good, I've got it all figured out, get out of here. And if you don't, if you want to spend the time up until 12 staying here in this room, working on this stuff and asking me questions, I'll hang out as long as anybody else wants to hang out up until 12 if you want to, okay? But that's my goal. I want to make sure that I'm here for anyone that wants to stay, but I don't want you to feel obligated to stay past that, okay? Is that fair? Excellent. So, thinking about the class thus far. So you did the assignment, school-wide system of positive behavior support, which, yes, is thinking a lot about the kinds of behaviors that we want to see out of our students, but really is about getting to what we want them to do to make sure that their behavior is at a place where we can effectively teach them, right? So in large part, it's about thinking about the stuff that is problematic that kids do in the classroom, right? And then you did the functional behavior assessment, which is really specifically starting to drill down and look at, okay, here are the interfering behaviors someone's engaging in, and here's what we're going to potentially do about it. This assignment is much more specifically a skill building assignment. It's thinking about what are the things that somebody needs to be able to be successful, what are the things that we want to teach somebody, and then how do we go about teaching those things. So my first question, for anyone who wants to be brave, is how do we figure out what we're going to teach the people that we're working with? How do we come to those decisions about what it is that we're going to teach?
Maybe something that's a skill that's preventing them from accessing other skills.
Awesome, excellent. Okay, so something that they need because it's going to open them up to be able to do other things they need to do. Excellent, great. Yeah.
Assessments like the ABLE.
Awesome, excellent. So we do assessments. That's great. Which really, that what we're doing there is a piece of that, a piece of assessment, right? Is we're hopefully thinking critically about what is important for this person to have, you know. And so for some of you that are in something closer to a regular education classroom, that may be based on the scope and sequence of what students are working on to get towards their high school diploma. For those of you that are working in homes, or for those of you that are working in substantially separate classrooms, it may be more geared towards life skills, activities of daily living, communication, but ultimately there should be some kind of assessment that's done. We want to think about, okay, what skills does this person have that I'm working with, and what are the next logical skills that they might need to be able to be successful? So by and large, I'm going to pass this, and this two, you can take one and then pass them that way and sort of stick around the whole thing. Is I'm passing around a packet that will start to let you do an assessment, arrive at what some learning targets might be, and then think about how you're going to address those learning targets. So you mentioned the ABLEs in the back, right? Has anyone else used the ABLEs or things like that? Okay, a few hands go up. So when we think about formalized, okay, let me stop. So anyone use the BB map before? Anyone use the Essential for Living curriculum? I didn't think any hand was going to go off. That's what we're going to talk about today, is the Essential for Living a little bit. There are several different kinds of testing that you can do, but we can generally group them into two categories. We can have a category of testing that's kind of like formalized testing, that's going to result in you getting an age or a grade score in a bunch of different areas. IQ testing gives you a number, okay, but doesn't necessarily tell you what you're going to work on. Okay, it just says, okay, this is where someone's skill is in this area. The other kind of testing, things like the ABLES and the BB map and the Essential for Living, are more criterion-based assessments. That rather than saying, okay, you're at the equivalent of someone who's X number of years old or in X grade, it talks about these are the skills that you have, and these are where the gaps are in those skills. So in that respect, these kinds of assessments are really, they're really prescriptive. They tell you, okay, here's a logical place to jump in and start targeting skills with the learning. Okay. Now, people that mentioned that they've worked with the ABLES or worked with the BB map, those are they're very similar. One sort of the extension of the next, done by Partington and Sundberg. They're a kind of test that specifically looks at your developmental level. Okay, so the way that things are organized in that kind of an assessment is it's going to say these are the skills that someone should have by the time they're 12 months old, okay, or 18 months old, and then these are the skills that someone between 18 and 36 months should have, and these are the skills that someone between 36 months and 48 months should have, so going up to 4 years of age, right? And the way that assessment is organized is you sort of so we get these series of columns, right? And there are all these component skills within the column. And you assess somebody and you say, yep, they've got this skill, which is sort of like the basic one that someone should have, and yep, they've got that one, and yep, they've got that one. And you do this in a whole bunch of different domains. And eventually you see, okay, they've got everything here. And then you see little areas, okay, they don't have that skill up there. So you basically start at the bottom and work your way up and say, oh, that's the skill that this person needs to work on. Okay? It makes a lot of sense. You're building developmentally, but that's one way of looking at how you determine what kind of learning targets somebody can have. This is probably not that different from those of you that are working in more of a general education environment. When you think about how students might learn math or social studies or science, you start with some basic knowledge and you work your way up, right? And in theory, if you've got a decent school system, we're starting with, you don't jump into with your kindergartner saying, let's tackle calculus, right? Let's start working on, on basic addition first. And then once we start getting that as a prerequisite to what comes next, and then a prerequisite to what comes after that, you sort of build on things that way. So the ABLES and the BB map are basically, they're set up that way, but set up developmentally, okay? So the overarching concern in figuring out what to teach next is what developmentally would come next for this learner, and we're going to jump in there. The one that I passed out to you, which is a component of the Essential for Living, it's a different kind of assessment. And so, just a little bit about me. In addition to being on faculty here at Pittsburgh State, I own an agency here in the Pittsburgh area that provides home-based supports to kids on the autism spectrum. We support about 40 or so kids in their homes, got a team of BCBAs that go in and do assessments, design programming, and then direct support professionals who work in the home with them. And this is the assessment that we use for our initial assessment, the Essential for Living. And as opposed to being developmentally based, it takes a look at, let's forget about when in someone's life they might acquire these skills that they were typically developing. And it says, which of these skills are the most critical for the person with disabilities to acquire in order to be successful, be safe, be happy, okay? And sort of puts aside developmentally when they might acquire those skills, okay? So, so you might find, and we'll certainly see as we go through those, as we go through some of these skills, some of them might be things that you wouldn't expect someone to acquire by certainly by the time of 18 months. So one of the skills that we're gonna be looking at. All right, we'll get to when we get to a situation, a thing down lower. But one of them that we're going to find over here is can repeatedly and forcefully say no to an unwanted physical or sexual advance. Okay? You don't expect someone by the time that they're 18 months to be able to do that, right? But for the person with disabilities, that's a really critical skill for them to be able to have. Okay? So that sort of illustrates the difference between an assessment tool like the ABLES or BB Map, that's going to look developmentally, versus the Essential for Living, which is going to look at things in terms of relative importance for safe, successful, happy life. Okay, and you can see with both of those, it illustrates the difference between those and more of a norm referenced test, right? That's going to give you like an IQ score or a grade equivalent, right? That there's nowhere that being able to say no to an unwanted sexual advance is going to show up on their IQ test. Okay, oh, I see that there are 2 standard deviations below, so no, it doesn't work like that, right? So that, well, listen, that's not to belittle things like IQ tests or standardized testing. There's a place for that kind of stuff, but it doesn't necessarily direct you to what we're going to do. So for the purposes of our class, in general, for the purposes of your work with students with moderate or severe disabilities, you're going to want to be really thinking critically about what are the skills that this person is for. Okay. And so again, so this comes from the Essential for Living, and it talks about in the big old manual that you get. It's a curriculum for students with moderate and severe disabilities. So I thought it applied particularly well for this class. But also, I think that there's probably a wide range of students that you guys are working with. So some of you are taking this class as 8180, some of you are taking it as 8020, which really the difference is whether it's students with moderate disabilities or students with severe disabilities. But if there's one thing that I consistently find in the work that I do with school districts is that there's absolutely no consistency in what someone considers a moderate disability and what someone considers a severe disability, right? So you're probably going to be working with a wide range in your careers, you know? You may find that you're working with students that really it's about, okay, let me just think about what modifications or accommodations I can make to the general ed curriculum, and the students can be able to be really successful. But you may find yourself working with students who don't have any reliable means of communication, who are nonverbal. So there should be a wide range of what you might be working with. So what I did was, what all of you have in your packet is you have, it starts off with this, is the Essential for Living Quick Assessment. And this is the tool that we use when one of my DCDAs goes out to meet with a parent, to meet a child for the first time. This is the assessment that they're going through to start to get a sense of what are the learning targets we want to work on with this child. Okay. My guess is for most of you, I guess what I'm going to ask you is to think about, someone that you're working with now that you think it might be appropriate to assess where they are from a skill standpoint that you're thinking about designing your learning targets for. And my guess is you probably have, I'm hoping you have answers to a lot of these questions already. As we go through, you're going to be able to say, yeah, he can do that, or yeah, she's pretty good at that, and he can't really do this one over here. And so you can start to answer these questions yourself. Typically, we would do it in an interview format, and then empirically validate the results of that interview by saying, okay, can the child really do the things the parent is saying yes, or do they have skills the parent is saying they don't have? And then once we get through the Essential 8, what I'll say is that going through these and the stuff that we're going to go through in the initial section here, pretty much every single child that we work with, we're able to identify a good number of learning targets just from that Essential 8. Okay, and that's not to suggest that the only learners that we work with are learners with severe disability. We're not. We're working with many learners that have typical or above average IQs. That if the diagnosis still existed, probably would be considered Asperger's, right? That really the issue is executive functioning and social skills and that kind of stuff. But then like pretty reliably, we get to see, and I wish that this wasn't up here. We get to tolerating other things, right? And then we get, oh yeah, really doesn't like loud noises. Oh, really not great at taking turns. Oh, organization kind of stinks. And then, okay, now we've got our learning targets that go in there. So by and large, we're able to come up with 8 to 10 learning targets just from the essential 8, even for really high functioning learners. But I did include in the back sort of the next steps to what you would do if, like, let's say you get through the essential 8 and you're saying, yeah, my learner's got all this stuff, is doing perfect. If we scroll down just really quick, so if you guys turn over to run out of here. You guys have a diagram in yours. I don't have it up here on the thing. If you go back probably about halfway in your packet, there's a big page. It's like a solid grid with all different like numbers and. So it says page 16 on it, and it's right after, which isn't really page 16, sorry. It looks like this guy. It's got some arrows on the side with a big full-page grid over here. It's about a third of the way through the packet. Like at the bottom it says start here. So like this is a grid that the Essential for Living is going to use to sort of figure out where you prioritize. And so those ones at the bottom that are bolded, those are the ones we're going to find from going through the Essential 8, okay? But if we work our way up, the skills get progressively more difficult, to the point that honestly, by the time we get to the top stuff, the more difficult, less frequent stuff, I'm not convinced I've got all the skills that are listed in the Essential for Living personally. And that's okay, right? Because I'm not fully self-actualized. And I would guess that we all probably have little areas that we continue to work on and make things better in our lives. So certainly for the students that we're working with, by the time you work your way all the way up, you should be able to identify some learning targets along with that student. So what I did was, in addition to the Essential 8, I included the next level up that I'm guessing that you should be able to. If you can't find targets in the Essential 8, you're going to be able to find some targets a little bit above that. So what I'd like us to do, and again, I'm going to get us started now, and then we'll move on to some other stuff. This is the stuff that you can do after I tell you, okay, I'm going to close my eyes and you can go if you want to go. Okay? But if you stick around, we can go through all this together. So we've got all these different categories: spoken words, alternative method of speaking, making requests, waiting, etc. I'm way back in the beginning now. I'm sorry. So essentially, we're going to go through and we're going to look at the first category over here. It's still outside of the essential. This is about getting someone's vocal profile. So it says spoken words, the extent to which a learner exhibits spontaneous, understandable spoken words, and the conditions under which spoken word repetitions occur. And then you look at what the different choices are. And it ranges in the hierarchy from exhibits only noises and a few sounds, okay? All the way up to exhibits many spontaneous spoken words, nearly typical spoken word interactions, and spoken word repetitions when asked to do so, all of which are understandable, okay? And then we've got a bunch of things in between. Yeah, exhibits some stuff, but it's not always clearly understandable. Exhibits many things, but not as reliably as it could be. So you're going to circle 1, 2, 3, 4 for your learner, okay? And this is going to give you it starts to set a framework in your mind for, okay, what are the learning targets that we can think about, and what are the ways in which I'm going to go about teaching those things. So again, for those of you who are working with kids that are in a fully included gen ed classroom, you're just making relatively minor academic modifications, and they're pretty much doing the work that their neurotypical peers are doing, you're probably circling 4 for that, right? Exhibits many spontaneous, they speak typically, right? So you're circling 4 up there. And then we move on. For those of you that have students that are falling into the exhibits only noises and a few sounds, we've got alternative method of speaking. Ranging from has been using an effective alternative method of speaking for more than 6 months versus has no formal method of speaking or is using one or more ineffective methods. Anyone work with students that are nonverbal? Wow! Okay, lots of you work with students that are nonverbal. How do they communicate? What are they using?
My students
Okay, and so it's like,
It's pretty inconsistent, though. It's fairly new to her.
okay,
And she doesn't really have the cause and effect to use it effectively, but
okay.
we're working on it.
Fair enough. So we've got an augmented communication device, but it's not really being used super effectively at this time. Okay, great. Anyone else have other things that their students are using?
We're using a lot of board maker pictures.
Okay.
Still trying to figure out what works best.
Okay, are you using like in terms of packs, literally
Yeah.
picture exchange? Okay,
Yeah.
great, excellent. Anyone else have anything? Yeah.
We use iPads with like Proloquo to go.
Proloquo, excellent, great, okay. Anyone else? Great, those are really common ones. Other ones are some people use ASL, right? Some kind of sign or modified sign, okay? Which again, what that is, it's an alternative method of speaking. But then again, I thought it was a really good point that was brought up here, is two different people talked about, yeah, we're using this device, and we're using these things, but not super consistent, not really sure what's working. Okay, so they've got a method, but using one or more ineffective methods, right? So are they able to reliably communicate, you know, both expressively and receptively using that method, okay? So you're going to circle there. And so again, those of you who have students who are vocal verbal, you don't even have to address this, right? Because they're not using an alternative method at all. They're using vocal verbal behavior. They're speaking to tell you what they want, okay? But maybe you've got a student that's using Proloquo and has been using it reliably for a year and is awesome at working his or her way through a bunch of different screens to get to, you know, I can request everything that I want. Like I can go through and not just request that I'm hungry, but I can sit through this and I can tell you that I want wheat toast with my eggs. Awesome. Now we're rocking and rolling, right? And that's funny, right? Except that people that have vocal verbal behavior, that's what they can do, right? So we think about how effective is that method of speaking. So we think about, okay, where are they on that one? And then we just work our way all the way through. Now we're really getting into the heart of the essential 8 here. And this is one of the ones, this is what I love, one of the things that I love about the essential living curriculum, where it really starts to hit home that this is based on prioritizing based on how important it is for someone to have a skill. Anyone here heard of MAND training before? Okay, one hand went up. I'm not surprised that it's not a lot. So MAND training is really a fancy way of saying request training. Okay? So the typical linguistic and grammatical model of speech is that we have different parts of speech, like nouns and verbs and adjectives and adverbs and all that kind of stuff. And that's sort of how we categorize different parts of speech. Going way, way back, 50 years ago, B.F. Skinner, who was sort of, you know, certainly the forefather of modern applied behavior analysis, talked about organizing speech differently. Instead of talking about things like nouns and verbs, he talked about, well, we need to think about speech in terms of what effect speech has on the social environment. And so instead of saying noun, verb, adverb, he talked about mans, tax, interverbals, and colors, okay? And among many, many other things. But a mans is a request. So it's maintained by someone's need or want for something, okay? And so we could think of mand as like command or demand.
Does the MAND training go along with the BB map? Because all those things you just listed.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. So it certainly can. Yes. So MAND, looking at MANs and tags definitely comes up in the BB map. Absolutely. But so Skinner talked about that what makes someone say water when they want a glass of water is different from what makes someone say water when you write this on the board and say, what's this? Water. Okay, fine, great, but that's different than when a waiter comes by saying, can I have a glass of water, okay? And then we can't necessarily make an assumption that just because someone can do one, that it means they can do the other, okay? So what I love about the Essential to Living curriculum is thinking about what's going to be most meaningful for someone. There's a huge focus on communication, okay? And within communication, there's a huge focus on management. Okay, we're on requesting the things that somebody wants. Because when we think about replacement behaviors, and many of you, as you did your functional behavior assessment, you're finding you've got behavior that's maintained by attention, behavior that's maintained by access to attention, people that engage in problem behavior to do those things. One of the primary ways of combating that problem behavior is teaching someone a more effective, efficient, socially appropriate way to make those requests known. Okay, in a way that's going to be honored. So someone that's engaging in interfering behavior I'm so tempted to read on this thing, for highly preferred items and activities. So someone that's currently engaging in self-injurious behavior, because when I engage in self-injurious behavior, someone quickly runs over and hands me a squishy ball. Okay? And I really like the squishy ball, so I punch myself in the head so I can get the squishy ball, right? If we can teach that person to request, squishy ball, please, you know, whether it's vocal or verbal behavior, whether, I don't know what the sign for squishy ball is, whether it's using your colloquo or your picture exchange or whatever the case may be, all else being equal, wouldn't most people rather get the squishy ball than saying, can I have the squishy ball and I punch themselves in the head? Yeah, most people probably would, right? So a big focus of the essential living curriculum is that communication, and specifically that manner. So as we continue to buzz through our essential aid, number one is making requests, the tendency to make requests for highly preferred items and activities. And it ranges from makes requests for 10 or more preferred items or activities without prompts using an effective method of speaking. Okay? That doesn't mean vocal verbal behavior necessarily, but it can be, right? You can have someone who is able to request all the things that they want verbally, all the way down to makes requests by exhibiting problem behavior. Okay, so no reliable way to say this is what I want, but engages in interfering behavior yet. Okay, it's also worth noting as you work your way through this, and as you start. My big focus here is that you're thinking critically about these things, right? Is just because somebody has vocal verbal behavior doesn't mean they make requests for 10 or more preferred items or activities using an effective method of speaking. Okay, you can still have someone who's got good vocal verbal behavior who reliably just goes to interfering behavior as a way to get the things that he or she wants. Okay. Honestly, probably less likely to see that in the school environment than in the home environment, but you will see it in both places.
I just have a question. If the student is like in between 3 and 4, do you like give them more leniency or not?
I don't know. Honestly, what do? Sometimes I circle them both, or I make a little note in the margin, and that's okay because again, ultimately, this isn't the kind of test like an IQ test where ultimately you're going to be giving someone a standardized score based on what's circling. This is really just about a way of organizing the skills that somebody has. So if you're not sure where it is, yeah, maybe circle them both, make a little note, and what you can see is this is going to be tied to, and we'll take a look at number 1 right here. If we look over here, the difference between makes requests for 1 to 3 and makes requests for 10 or more. Because honestly, so here's one of the areas where Pat McGree probably needs to refine his essential living curriculum a little bit. We jump from 3 to 10 or more.
Yeah,
but what about someone that's got 6? Where is that? There's more than 3, but it's not 10. So I guess we'd say 3. But, okay, so that's where you can refine this a little bit. But essentially, you get the point at which trying to figure out where is somebody in general. And you see that number 3 is tied to 7A, R7A. And if you go later on in your packet, after we get through this assessment, you're going to see those things listed R7 and 8. It's saying that if this is what they have, these are where you should be working. So if we go, and my scan I know is a mess. My scan only did every other page. But let's see, R7 and 8, here we go. So R7 is make requests for highly preferred snack foods, drinks, non-food items, or activities that can be made frequently and immediately available. R8 is request the opportunity to entertain themselves or to reduce anxiety by making stereotypic movements with highly preferred items or engaging in highly preferred stereotypic activities. Okay? So basically what the point there is, and don't get freaked out by the language if that's not language that we're used to. But what that essentially means is, if you're under making requests and you circle 3, makes requests for 1 to 3 preferred items or activities with or without prompts. McGreevy is saying, take a look at R7 and R8. Those might be logical places to start for learning targets, okay? Versus if we've got someone that makes requests for 10 or more preferred items, we've got, different targets. Or makes requests by exhibiting problem behavior. Now we've got to look at R1 through 5, R6, as well as R7 and 8. But those might be logical places to look.
So let me just get this right. You figure out where they are on the scale of 1 to 4, and if they hit for making request number 3, you go to R7, R8, and that's what you want to work on.
And then you take a look at those, and you see, do these make sense for my learner, right? Because maybe what you do, so let's do that one. We go back to R7 and R8. And we see, okay, you know, makes requests for highly preferred, yeah, all these items. Yeah, that makes sense. So we can work on some basic command because they've only got 1 to 3. Let's try to diversify that a little bit, right? Someone that's using, maybe someone that's using ProLoco or PEX only has 1 or 2 different things that they reliably touch to request. We say, okay, let's build up that repertoire a little bit more. That makes sense, okay? But then you may go to R8 and say, request the opportunity to entertain themselves and reduce anxiety by making stereotypic movements. Everyone know what we're talking about when we say stereotypic movements? So for those of you that don't, repetitive, non-functional movements, okay? Essentially, if you look at, if someone's doing something that you're like, why are they doing that? You're pretty much talking about stereotypy. It doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. And listen, we all engage in stereotypy to some degree, right? If I were sitting there with you, I'd be going constantly, my knees down, up and down, right? So you're going to be putting your pen. And that's okay, because it's not interfering with your learning. It's not disrupting anyone else all that much. Although sometimes, I know that I mentioned the boy where he said that I'm that guy for having you guys here more, will also yell at me because my legs going on the couch real quick. Sorry. So now it's socially problematic. My legs bouncing right now, and so I rein it in. And I don't need to do it. I can read the social situation and change my behavior accordingly. But let's say that you've got a learner that they've only got those 1 to 3 requests, but the stereotypy is not a big issue. They're not engaging in frequent stereotypy. It's not something that they default to. So the stereotypy that we see, okay, students with autism spectrum disorders. What kind of stereotypy do you guys see? Flapping, like this, going like this. Okay, what else do we see? Like this?
Yeah.
Up in the lights, maybe?
Flicks the eyelashes.
Yeah, flicking the eyelashes. What else do we see? Rocking back and forth, absolutely. Vocal stereotypy, someone say? Absolutely. Repeating phrases, scripting, absolutely, yeah. All these kinds of things, right? Some of which involve items, right? There's this one, right? Some people get into doing that kind of thing. So this is something that someone really likes to do, or maybe it's for years, right? Now all of a sudden, okay, request the opportunity to entertain themselves with stereotypic movements. Okay, now we're going to teach them to request that piece of paper. They need to be able to do that, but specifically to engage in stereotypy. Or maybe someone's stereotypy just involves needing different items or going to a specific area to do it. Then you might teach them to do that. But for someone who's not in that boat, then no, they're not looking to engage in frequent stereotypy, or the stereotypy they engage in doesn't require any items. Then this probably doesn't make sense as a learning target. So it doesn't mean that because someone scored a 3, you have to target these 2. But it's like, hey, here's a place to look at. These ones might make sense. But you might find that you need to go back earlier and pick other things. Okay. So, and then essentially what you're going to do is for every single one of these essential 8, and then there are some other learning targets over here, just go through and rank all of those, and it's going to start to give you an idea about where you want to jump in with your learning targets. Okay? So again, you're just, up here, it's going to look like a little profile with, you just see different areas where they're really high and areas where they might be low. And it gives you some idea of where you might want to jump in. And then what you're going to do after you buzz through doing all of those, you can think about vocal profile, which if you come to, and again, I'm sorry, I've only got every other page here, that's the one that has it, so scan it, and I should have checked that. There's a place where it says vocal profile, and there are 6 different vocal profiles listed, ranging from somebody's got, nearly typical vocal verbal behavior, all the way down to noises, a few sounds and syllables. So again, going from somebody who's carrying a conversation with you, all the way to someone who, yeah, they make noises sometimes, and sometimes they even almost sound like words, but I can't really be sure if that was a word or if it was just kind of an accent that kind of sounded like a word. Okay? And again, that's not specifically going to tell you what it is that you're going to target, but it starts to give you an idea of how you might go about targeting or what the scope might be. So you're going to go through, you're going to evaluate someone's vocal profile, And then we're going to get into all of these different skills and all these different domain areas, okay? So what you can do is you can use what you scored on the Essential 8 to start thinking about where jumping in points might be. Or what you can do is you can literally just buzz through all of them. Like a code, it's not a very sophisticated code. If I'm going through one of these with a family and I'm like, oh yeah, this is an issue, I circle it. That tells me if that's a good one to do it. No, that one's not an issue, I have to put an X through it. Okay? So then I can go back and I can see, okay, these are the ones that are being highlighted as important areas to target. And again, it's broken down into a bunch of different categories. And then within, for the Essential 8, for what you're going to do, all the categories fall under these must-have skills. So you've got different categories like listener responses, vocal responses, motor movements, tolerating skills, all different kinds of things, okay? Within each of those, you've got subcategories. Within each of those, the subcategories we're going to be dealing with for the Essential 8, they're all must-have skills, which what we were saying, these are skills, it's not rocket science, right? Must-have skills are skills that someone with disabilities must have to be able to be successful. Okay, so those are the ones that he's suggesting strong. After must-have skills, which are really going to be everything we're doing for the Essential 8, odds are you're going to find, I always find 8 to 10, probably more. I'm finding, okay, now I've got to figure out which one of the 30 that I circled are the really important ones to target first, right? But at least you're going to find 8 to 10 there. And for this assignment, I'm only going to ask you to do 3, okay? You're probably going to find 3 within the Essential 8 and the must-have skills. But if you don't, I included some other stuff down at the end of that. So if you look back at that, at the big grid that we spent a little bit of time on that had the start here with the arrow pointing up, so the ones that are on the Essential 8 are those bolded ones down at the bottom. What I did was I copied pages from the manual for the next level up, which starts to get into some of the should-have skills. These are skills that disabilities should have to be able to be successful. Okay? We're really not starting to touch on the other categories, which are good to haves and nice to haves, you know, which is just a nice user-friendly way of thinking about what these skills are. Must have, should have, good to have, nice to have. But essentially, I put the level going one up from there, and so you can see. So you see, like we've got under should have. Request and related listener responses are 22 to 48. So what I did there was I copied those are the ones that are there. So if you're finding that you're stumped, you have to go through the Essential 8 and you're like, I don't have 3 learning targets. Go to the next level up. And now let's say that you go through all of that too, and you're like, no, this, you know, what Rob's talking about is totally off base for me. These are not students that I'm working with. Then that's okay too. Then you can say that and then just pick learning targets that make sense for your students, even if they're not representative.
If we have like one of the must-have, that's fine, and then to go on to this next list.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, do what you need to do. So again, I hope that I've made it clear in the online portion of this class. My primary focus for you guys as educators and as professionals is that this course is relevant and meaningful for you. So please don't do something that you're like, yeah, I'm just doing it because it's what the assignment is and I'm never going to use this stuff or it's not meaningful for me. I would so much rather have you take an actual student that you're working with. Think about that student critically, come up with real learning targets that you're going to use for that student. Okay? And I don't much care where those targets come from. If you find yourself going through this whole thing, not being able to find them.
If our students like already have targets, can we use those or should we?
Yeah, that's fine. If you've got something that's already got learning targets, that's fine. Yeah. I would still ask you to at least buzz through the Essential 8 just so you can talk about how your learning targets map on to what the learning, what shows up in the assessment. That would be great. Just so we all get practice doing the assessment. So again, if we talk about the assignment and then some change to the assignment. This is the assignment that was posted on Blackboard, okay? Which was to come up with measurable objectives, 4 goal areas, 4 programs that target those learning objectives. We're cutting data this a little bit, okay? What I want you to do is go through the assessment, come up with 3 learning targets.
Where is this on?
This is under, it's in a weird place. Admittedly, it's in the module under behaviors to decrease, which is crazy because this is behaviors to increase, but that's where it falls from a timeline standpoint as to when the assignment is due. Okay? But again, the bottom line is I'm asking you to not worry about what's actually written here, and let's talk about what's going on here in class. What in my mind, you can be done with this assignment by taking the packet that you have in front of you, going through it and scoring everything for your student. There are a couple of worksheets in the back that we're going to go over in a minute. Go over those worksheets, fill them out, and then scan the packet and upload it to Blackboard when you're done.
So there's no written assignment that goes with this?
Just the packet. There's nothing else additional written in the packet. Absolutely. Again, and I don't know if that's what you guys typically get from your other professors, but I'm about utility here. Really, I want it to be useful for you.
Is this online? Because I've kind of been writing on it, and if I wanted to make it a little bit neater to pass it.
I will put it up online. But I'm going to have to rescan it because obviously I only got half of it because it's scanned one side and my parents 2 sides.
So you just want us to identify the 3 learning targets?
We're going to identify them and then we're going to design a program for it.
Okay.
Yes. So and that's the next step.
Okay.
Before I get on to the next step, any questions about the essential for living curriculum, sort of how you're going to go through and how you're going to score things and prioritize your targets? And again, you probably know, I'm guessing you're going to pick someone that you know, so you're going to be able to do it largely by yourself. If we're out there doing this with a parent, we're going to fill out the form. It's largely done via interview, but then we're going to empirically validate the things that we're looking to target. We're going to take some baseline data and see, okay, so one thing that one thing that sometimes happens is we get to the point where we're asking questions about activities of daily living. And we ask, so how's toothbrushing? Oh yeah, no problem, toothbrushing goes fine. Okay, great, awesome. Independent? Yep, independent. Sweet. Okay, so we mark it off independent. And then we see what independent really looks like. And what it actually is the parent sitting there saying, pick up your toothbrush. Put toothpaste on that. Keep brushing, no, keep going. Well, that's not really independent, is it, right? So it's important to empirically validate the information that you're getting. So we do the essential for living, and then what I put together in the back are some worksheets. And I'll tell you what, I'm definitely going to be looking for, as we, not today, but I would love it at some point in the class if you give me a little bit of feedback on this. I just designed these, I'm not sure how they're going to work out. But has anyone ever run discrete trials before? Lots of people have run discrete trials. So for those of you who haven't run a discrete trial, essentially a discrete trial consists of the presentation of a stimulus. Okay, you show somebody something, or present someone with something. They generate a response to whatever that stimulus is. You provide some kind of consequence based on whether their response is correct or incorrect. And then there's a brief, they call it an intertrial interval, which is a couple of seconds where the cognitive psychologist would say it's for the person to consolidate their learning, and behaviorists would say that's time for me to put a little plus mark on my data sheet and get ready to run the next one. Okay? So literally, a discrete trial might be, let's say that I'm working on receptive letter identification. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my thing ready. I'm going to hold it up and I'm going to say touch A. Okay, and there's my antecedent. There's my presentation of the stimulus. Okay, I'm looking for the person to touch A. The person touches A, and I say, nice job, that is touching A. Maybe I'm delivering a token or an edible or something like that. Okay, so me holding it up and saying touch A, that's the stimulus. Them touching A, that's the response. Me saying nice job, here's the reinforcer. That's the consequence. Okay, and then the intertrial interval is time for me to erase my ABC. It's time for me to put a little plus mark, and then hold this up and say touch A, and I'll switch things around, right? So they're always pointing to the same side. Okay, and you run, and each one of those units, stimulus, response, consequence, intertrial, interval, is one discrete trial. okay? It's discrete, D-I-S-C-R-E-T-E, not E-E-T. It's not like we're showing discretion with our trial presentation. It's that it's a discrete unit that we're presenting. So one of the ways of teaching is using discrete trial learning. Very often you see this with stuff that can be that's rote in nature. So receptive letter ID, but also expressive letter ID, right? This is something different. What letter? No reason to assume that I can say touch A and someone points to A, that I always have to say what letter, that they can tell me A, right? Two different skills. So you see it a lot, you know, with young students and with students with severe disabilities. You see it done a lot with that. But there's even for those of you that are teaching in a general education classroom, there's lots of opportunity, if not for formal discrete trial, holding stuff up like that and you know working intensely one-on-one. There's lots of utility for a discrete trial methodology. If you use flashcards, you're basically using kind of sloppy discrete trials when you're doing that, right? Okay. My kids, I've got a 16-year-old, 13-year-old, 10-year-old, okay, and all of them when they were young mastered their. The 10-year-old is still struggling because she hates math. The older two learned their basic math facts through a computer program called FastMath, okay, which is it's about rote memorization, but essentially what you get is this pops up on the screen, right? And you get some time to respond to it, okay? If you respond correctly within a second, so she puts one, she gets it right, boop, a little high beep, it's like really exciting beep, yeah, you nailed it, right? And then it goes away for a second, and then the next one comes up. Discrete trial, right? Stimulus, response, the high beep is the consequence. We make a trial engine. We're running discrete trials, okay? If it takes her a second and a half to put up the one, because she can't think about it, okay? And then it's the one, boop, you get a little lower beep. It's like, yeah, you still got it, but kind of slow, okay? And then if you get it wrong, or if you don't answer, then the answer comes up for you, you get no beep at all, and it moves on to the next one, okay? So you get differential consequences based on how you respond. So when we do that kind of stuff, it's basically discrete trial work. My guess is, I mean, going all the way up into high school, there are times where there's stuff you need to memorize, right? There are dates in history. There are people. There are just all kinds of stuff that you can't logic your way through. It's like, yeah, you just sort of need to memorize that, okay? This is where discrete trial methodology can be effective for doing it. Doesn't have to be individual, right? I don't necessarily have to. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to teach all of you guys how to expressively identify letters. Everybody ready? Okay, I'm going to hold something up, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold this up, and no one answer. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, then you all answer in unison. Everybody ready? I'm going to hold it up. What letter? 1, 2, 3. A. Awesome. Nice job. We just ran a discrete trial with the entire class. Okay? It's called choral responding. Okay? And it's got a lot of utility as opposed to being in a situation where I say, hey Johnny, I'm going to put this letter up. You tell me what it is, okay? Put it up, and Johnny says A, and the other, how many of you are there in here? Like 30-something people? And so the other 32 of you are picking your noses, right? While Johnny's answering A, right? Because there are two now. Why do I need to pay attention to that? I'm not the one that's getting called on, okay? But we run it like this. Everybody, here we go. Boom. You have to be engaged. You have to be attentive. So it generates more learning opportunities. It also sets the stage for the teacher really quickly to be able to determine if students aren't getting it. Okay, wait, no, I'm hearing sort of, I heard A over here, but I heard some over here. People come from their mouths and they answer on this side of the room, okay? So we can think about discrete trial methodology as being more than just working with kids with severe disabilities in a cubby knee-to-knee, okay, which is how it's often thought. So, as far as the worksheet, again, what I'm looking for you guys to do is to design 3 different learning programs based on three learning targets. What I did was I included 4 different examples of worksheets that you might be able to use these methodologies to affect learning. We can use discrete trial to affect learning. We can use task analysis-based methodology to affect learning. We can use a shaping protocol to affect learning. We can use a grading protocol to affect learning. I'm in no way insinuating that that is an exhaustive list of ways that we can teach people things, but those are 4, pretty bread and butter ways of teaching people to do things from a behavior analytic point of view, which is what I do, okay? So what I'm asking you is to design 3, and I would like you to use at least 2 of these formats. So if you want to do 2 programs using discrete trial and one using task analysis, okay, that's fine. If you want to really stretch yourself, pick 3 different methods for each of your 3 languages, okay? But then essentially what I'm looking for you to do is let's say that you decide that you're going to teach something using discrete trial. Basically fill out this worksheet. And my goal here is to get you to think critically about what you're going to teach. Like sometimes people who run discrete trial or who design discrete trial, there's sort of a standard session sheet that's got a whole bunch of letters on it that tells you what should go where, and stimulus and response and remediation and all that kind of stuff. And it's easy just to like have your eyes sort of glaze over, or to just use like standard things. Like sometimes what I'll see on these, and professional behavior analysts, okay? They're working on I'm getting someone to expressively identify letters, okay? And you get to the point where it says prompting hierarchy, and it says full physical, light physical, gesture. Really? How do you full physical getting someone to say the letter A? Right? And so it's clear they're just not thinking about what the program is that they're running, okay? So just getting you to think critically about what it is that you're trying to do and how you're going about trying to do it. So for the discrete trial, what's the learning target category that you're working on? So in our example here where we're doing A, B, and C, our category is receptive letter identification, right? Because there are a bunch of different targets that fall under there. There's 52 of them anyway, right? We can do capital and we can do lowercase. So there's lots of different learning targets, but the category is receptive letter identification. Distributed trial or masked trial, and why? Anyone here heard the terms distributed trial versus masked trial? Okay, so just 2 different ways of running your discrete trials. So it's easier for me to illustrate with expressive letter. So we'll get those. Okay. What letter? Nice. Good job. What letter? Nice job. That's good work. What letter? It is B. You nailed it. Good job. See, I'm differentiating my reinforcement. I'm trying to be a little animated. And what letter is this one? Yeah, it is A. So that's distributed trial. Okay. One example of distributed trial, because I'm not presenting the same target all the time. I'm giving lots of different targets for someone to respond to. We could also, if we wanted to be really funky and be a little more holistic. What letter? Nice, nailed it. Good job. It is A. What number? Yeah, okay, so now it doesn't have to always be within the same category that we present in distributed trial. We can bounce around. Maybe we're hitting lots of different targets. And then we're going to go, what shape? Nice job, it is a circle. What letter? Yeah, it is an O. Nice job. What number? 0. Nailed it. Good, right? So we can do it lots of different ways. But the bottom line is with distributed trial, we're not presenting the same learning target all the time. Versus, if I'm going to do masked trial, ready? What letter? Nice job, it is A. What letter? Nice job, it is A. What letter? Yes, A! Okay, you start laughing, right? But that's another way of teaching things. And there can be benefit. You guys heard of the New England Center? NEC? Okay. NEC is pretty famous for their mass trials. I don't know if they still do it as much as they used to, but their standpoint always was, we've got people with pretty significant disabilities who it's pretty difficult for them to get acquisition. So we mass trial the hell out of things until we get reliable responding, and then we move to more of a distributed trial format, okay? Versus someone who maybe doesn't have the same kinds of deficits. I want to very quickly start to vary what I'm showing somebody to get them to really be responding to a variety of different things, okay? Because the bottom line is, so I said, like, what letter, what letter, what letter? You said A every single time. Eventually, if I do this, what letter? What do they say? A. It doesn't matter what's on the card, right? place. I'm just teaching any student will say A, right? So then you got to work around it. So there's benefits to doing both. So distributed trial or mass trial, and why? So think about it. Why am I choosing to teach the way that I want to teach? And so your rationale for this might be, well, I want to use distributed trial because I've got a learner with a pretty good skill set, with pretty good discrimination skills in terms of making visual contact with the materials. Or maybe I'm doing mass trial. Why am I doing mass trial? Because I've got a person that's, that's really pretty low cognitively, that has struggled with discrete trials before, and I want to make sure I get that initial acquisition. Just talk about why. And again, I don't need a paragraph. Just give me this is why. Because
So, you can pick one or the other, or you can pick both, you know,
yes, so here's what you can do is, for each program that you're designing, you can only pick masked or distributed. But if you wanted to do one masked and one distributed, you can do that, but it would be two separate programs.
Okay.
Because by definition, if you're teaching something in distributed trial format, you can't be teaching in masked trial format. So then what are your learning targets? If you've got distributed trial, you're probably, for here, we're going to put 3 learning targets as a place to start, okay? So if I'm doing my receptive letter ID, learning target categories, receptive letter ID. I'm doing distributed trial. My learning targets are A, B, and C. Okay? Again, it's nothing super complex. We're just thinking about how you're going to organize what it is that you're doing. If I'm doing mass trial, what is your learning target? Because you're only doing one. My learning target is A. Okay? What materials are required, including reinforcers, is appropriate? So what do I need? Well, for me, I need a dry erase board. I need a dry erase marker. I don't necessarily need like a table and chairs and that kind of stuff because I'm not a need and need kind of guy. I think that it makes for a lousy generalization when that's how we teach all the time. But certainly, I need materials to be able to present my stimuli to the person, right? Maybe I'm running it with a token system, so I need tokens and a token board. Maybe I'm delivering edibles and reinforcers, so I need, a big jar full of M&Ms. But what materials am I going to need to be able to, I'm going to need a data sheet, I'm going to need a pen to be able to record the data. Okay, so what materials are required? And so once we've got that, we're starting to, again, create this situation where we have everything we need to be able to make this happen. What method will you use to teach? And thinking about prompt fading. Did I talk in the lecture about prompt fading a little bit? Yes? Most to least, least to most, or progressive time delay. Okay? Right, so if my prompting hierarchy is full physical, partial physical. I apologize for my handwriting. Gesture / points. Independence. If this is my prompting hierarchy, what does most to least prompting look like? What do I do? Start with full physical, right? Okay, so let me start with full physical. And I just want to take a moment to make sure that it's clear with that when you start with full physical and then move to light physical and then move to gesture or point, you don't do that within the same trial, right? You can't possibly do it in the same trial. Once you full physical, you full physical, okay? So is that full physical? Okay, so APC. So I'm going to borrow your hand, okay? Okay, so touch A, and I'm boom. That's touching A, nice job, and that's a correct response. I took her hand, and boom, she is touching A. That's a full physical prompt, okay? Once I've done that, she doesn't have the opportunity to respond independently then, right? So you start with the most restrictive, and then over the course of time, you move down to less and less and less restrictive. Versus if I'm doing least to most prompting, what does that look like?
You give it a chance to respond.
Good. Give them a chance to respond independently. It's basically the opposite of most to least. So again, we'll see if I have to borrow your hand this time, okay? Touch A. Nice job, that is touching A. I'm done. I didn't have to do anything else. Okay, but if I said touch A and she doesn't do anything, or she goes to touch B or whatever, then I'm going to say touch A, I'm going to the next most restrictive prompt, which is gesture or point, right? And in my prompting hierarchy, nothing magical about mine, it's just one way of organizing things, okay? And if she doesn't respond to that, then I'm gonna go to the elbow, right physical, touch A, she still doesn't, touch A, and now I'm making her touch A, okay, with full physical. So it's most to least, you start with the most restrictive and work your way down, least to most, you start with the least restrictive and work your way up. Really quickly about the two of those. So I'm going to want you to think about rationale for why you're using the map. Yeah, go ahead.
Do we have to put if we're doing errorless learning or error correction, or don't?
Yes,
Not-
yes. So that's absolutely going to come up. So errorless learning, which I love what you're talking about. When we talk about most to least, that's an errorless teaching procedure. And the reason it's errorless is because they call it errorless because the person doesn't have a chance to make a mistake. Right? You're immediately full physical and you're immediately, no, this is how I want you to respond. Versus going least to most is not an errorless correction procedure because the person has the opportunity to make errors. Okay? Now, errorless feels really good. It feels really nice. You want to stop making an error. And the research shows that people are going to find learning less aversive if they're making fewer errors. So there's a lot of benefit to using an errorless procedure. That being said, let's say that my criterion for advancement is three consecutive sessions with 80% correct at a prescribed prompting hierarchy. That's pretty standard. Okay? That's what you look for in something. Okay. If we're doing receptive letter ID, right? And I'm doing a most to least prompting hierarchy, which is an errorless learning procedure. Okay. My first step is full physical. So for the first 3 sessions of probably 10 trials each session, I'm taking my hand and going right there. Touch A, boom, touch A, boom, touch A, boom, touch A, boom. Okay? Then after I do my first 3 sessions, which maybe you're running a really tight ship and you get all 3 of those sessions done in one day. Realistically, you're probably running 1 session a day, so now you're 3 days in with full physical, and now you go to light physical, because they got them all right at full physical. Now you're running 3 days of touch A at a light physical, and then they get that, and now you're running 3 days of touch A at a point prompt. And then finally, you're running 3 days of touch A at independent. So the soonest somebody can get through, and you can say, yep, they've got A master, is 12 days. Okay? 2.5 school weeks. Versus, if you're going least to most, you're giving them a chance to respond independently every trial. What's the least number of days they can get 80% correct at independent for 3 days in a row? 3 days. 3 days, 3 school days versus 12 school days. Okay? Again, that's not saying you should use least to most. It's just saying that there are arguments to be made for doing it both ways. The argument for going most to least tends to be same thing that we talked about with mass trial. People that it's harder for them to acquire skills. People that have a history of responding with difficulty to discrete trial teaching. You know, so you want to make sure you're pumping with lots of reinforcement because they're getting the correct answer all the time. Okay? Rationale for going from least to most can be if someone tends to pick things up pretty quickly, good learning history with discrete trial, it's been effective before, efficiency. Okay, so again, I wouldn't have most to least and least to most if you were going to pick one and I was going to tell you wrong. Right? What would be the point of doing that? There's no right or wrong with any of these. Just why? What was your mindset in choosing to do one that you chose? And so I think this is going to be really highly specific to your own. And then the last one we can think about is progressive time delay. Okay, with progressive time delay for a prompting hierarchy. And we start off with, 4 plus 4 does not equal 4. Right? 4 plus 4 equals 8. Okay, so it starts off with, boom, 4 plus 4, the 8's already up there. 4 plus 4 equals 8. 4 plus 4 equals 8, right? You buzz through that. And then what you start doing is 4 plus 4 equals, and 1 Mississippi. and then the 8 pops up, okay? And then after they're getting it, and it's cool, they can wait until the 8 pops up to answer. They can always wait until the 8 pops up, but eventually you go from waiting 1 second for the 8 to pop up, to 2 seconds, to 5 seconds, to 10 seconds, and eventually the person responds before the 8 pops up, if you're providing sufficient reinforcement. So here's the other thing to think about with the street trials. Nothing you have to worry about with this assignment. But so here's the classic discrete trial error. Touch A, they touch A. Okay, so they touch A. Even though plus in the data sheet, they did it, okay. Touch B, okay, they touch B, okay, touch B, there's no plus, right? And then we go, touch C, and they touch A. And we say, oh, you're so silly, that's not A, that's C, what are you doing, right? And what we do is we reinforce people from making errors, right? Because we go overboard silly when they get the answer wrong, and we provide no reinforcement when they get the answer right. Okay? So this is, the other thing, the other use of computers with my kids is they all learned how to read using headstrap. Anyone heard headstrap before? Nice. It's called, I think, Mimeo now, but back in the day, it was called headstrap. Created by behavior analysts, and it's a combination of phonics-based and sight word-based learning. And what would happen is, they would tell you to click the sound, and you would click the sound, and it would go whoop, 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 and you got the sound right, make these little high-pitched noises. It was great, the kids loved it, right? And then we go on wrong, and go bonk, to let you know that you got it wrong, right? Well, it worked so well for my kids. I was at the clinical director of Darnell School, which is over in Hudson at the time, a school for kids on the spectrum. And I was like, wow, it works so well for them. It's an APA. Why wouldn't we use headstrap to try to teach some of these kids that are at that level how to be able to read? And for some of them, it worked great. And for some of them, they loved bonk when they got it wrong. Bonk, 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 every single time. So you have to make sure that the consequence that comes when the response is correct, is reinforcing, and the consequence that comes when the response is incorrect doesn't have to be punishing, but it can't be reinforcing. Okay? So just thinking about that. So there's other things to think about. So what is your criteria for advancement in your prompting hierarchy? Do I want X number of sessions with X% correct? Whatever. This is the class where I want 3 consecutive sessions at 80% correct, or some people say 2 consecutive sessions at 90%. Doesn't matter. And please, there's nothing magical about the number 80, and there's nothing magical about the number 3, just because that's what everybody uses all the time. But it's just some kind of predetermined criteria. So figure out what makes sense. Maybe you want your criteria to be, I want 100% correct for 3 consecutive sessions. Okay, that's cool. We can roll with that if you've got a rationale for that. Sometimes you see that I want someone to be able to cross the street safely at 70% accuracy. Cross the street safely with 100% accuracy, right? Just think about what the rationale is or what your criteria is. So criteria for advancement, but then also criteria for remediation, right? Let's say that you're running your most release prompting hierarchy, and maybe they got it at full physical, they got it at light physical, and then you go to the point prompt, and now they're bumming out. They're back down to getting 33% correct, which is chance, right? If you've got a field of 3. Just by chance, they're going to get a third of them right, okay? You're bombing out down there. So what's your criteria for saying, okay, we're having trouble, we need to go back up to a more restricted prompt, okay? What constitutes a correct response? Touch A, and the person goes, ah! Is that correct or incorrect? You say incorrect. Self-correction, incorrect, correct, I don't know. Depends, right? Depends on what you're saying correct responses. Typically what you would see, typically what you would see on the data sheet would get marked out as an SC with a circle around it, which in the data gets marked down as a minus as well, right? Because they didn't touch it immediately first. But specify that. If you're cool with someone self-correcting, if you've got a rationale for that, okay. So what constitutes a correct response? What is your response to correct responding at the prescribed prompt level? What do you do when the person gets it right? I try to use as much verbal as I can, if I can get that going on. And I try to pair my verbal with other kinds of reinforcement if I have to, if the kid's not digging just the verbal. So the stuff that I'm doing with you guys, hey, nice job, good work, I just touched it, yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly what I'm doing with the kids that I'm working with. okay? I'm trying to vary what my verbal response is. I'm trying to keep it exciting and animated as much as I can. And then for kids that don't really care much about the verbal stuff, I'm going to pair it with something else. I'm going to pair it maybe with giving them a quick little tickle or a shoulder rub, or if I have to, a token or a little piece of a chip or something like that, okay? Because essentially what I want eventually, I want them to like the verbal praise that I'm providing. And so if I can pair that verbal praise with other good stuff that they already like, eventually they're gonna respond just with verbal praise, okay? But bottom line is, what do you do when they get it right? Got to be something that's reinforcing. What constitutes an error? And what's your error correction procedure? So what do you do? What do you want to do if the person gets it wrong? What we're not going to do is say, "Oh, you're so silly. What are you thinking? Come on, buddy." No, we're not going to do that. You know, and there's a wide range of things that people do with the error correction procedure. Some it can be as simple as, you know, I hold this up and I say, "What letter?" And the person says B. Some people just like totally stump it. And wait, one's and hope they don't get whacked while they're doing it. And then turn back around and say, "What letter?" A, and they provide the correct response. Okay? It's a wide range of things you can do, but ultimately, how are you going to respond? That is hopefully going to affect learning. And then finally, once mastered, what's your plan for generalization and maintenance? Because just because, what letter? A, just because you can do it in here with me, doesn't mean you can do it when you're out somewhere else, right? Doesn't mean you can do it with a different teacher. It doesn't mean you can do it anywhere. And just because you can do it today, doesn't mean you don't see the letter A for a year, that I'm going to be able to pull it back up and say, "Well, I don't know, it's on the A, it's going to be gone." If you haven't seen it in a year, it's going to be gone. Okay? So think about what's my plan for generalization, which is spreading to other environments, different stimuli, different people, okay? And maintenance is what's your plan for it to last over time. So here's one thing that I'll tell you, is right now what I'm doing here, this is part of my plan for generalization. This is why I'm not using flashcards. Because flashcards look exactly the same every time. But my handwriting is always a little different each time I put it up. Okay, so I'm teaching slight variations in stimuli by writing each time. Okay? But maybe a piece of my plan for generalization is, I've seen this in schools before, is, okay, they've got it down working in the classroom. Seems silly, but we're going to go out in the hallway, and we're going to run in the hallway to make sure that you've got it there too. We're going to go run in the cafeteria, we're going to go run in the library, same program in a different location. Or, okay, we're going to have this second adult come over and run the program for a while and make sure that they get this adult, they get the other adult, they get another adult, okay? But what's your plan for making sure they've got it everywhere? Because at the end of the day, if you can do it sitting knee to knee with me at the desk, who cares? So what? Okay, but is it benefiting you in your life long term? And then maintenance typically is how many more days? I'm just going to stop running. Maybe I go from running it 10 times a day to running it once a day, to running it once every couple of days, to running it once a week. You know, how am I going to fade it out so that, you know, it continues to maintain? So, again, no specific answers that are right or wrong for any of this stuff, but in my mind's eye, by creating this would be my way of hoping to be able to get you to really think critically about what are the factors that have to go into my designing this program, and what are the things that I need to think about. So that's the one for discrete trial. There's one, the next one is two-sided for task analysis. And it's very similar, it's asking a lot of the same questions, but as we know, with the TA, or with the behavior change, you're essentially taking a complex skill and you're breaking it down into its component steps. Okay? So really the difference in what you're doing here is list out the steps that are in your task analysis. And I gave you room for 12 steps. Maybe you've got a TA that's longer than that. Certainly if you're jumping into like toothbrushing, maybe you've got like 20-something steps, or who knows. You know, you can get as crazy as you want for the steps of the TA. But you're breaking down tasks into some component steps, but a lot of the same questions. What materials are you using? What kind of prompting are you going to use? And now you're just taking a quick minute. Let's go back to thinking about errorless learning. Thinking about most to least prompting. We talked about it would take you 12 days minimum to demonstrate mastery or touch A. Let's say that you've got a task analysis that's got 20 steps in it, and you're using a forward chaining, most to least prompting hierarchy with 4 steps. Now you can take your 12 and you multiply it by 20, right? And now we've got 240 days minimum. So in the course of a school year, a 20-step task analysis that we teach forward chaining most of these, you cannot master it. If you are perfect, you cannot demonstrate mastery on it in the course of school. Okay? Again, some learners are going to need that because that's the way that their learning works. But just think about the ramifications of the prompting strategy that we choose. Same again, similar questions going all the way through. Forward chaining, backward chaining, total task presentation. I talked about that in the lecture, right? People feeling good about that? What's forward chaining? You start at the beginning, right? So get someone to master the first step. And then you're done. And then you're done. Time to brush your teeth, and they go into the bathroom and they turn on the light. We're done. Out we go. Literally, right? So just thinking about the implication when we say forward chaining, that's the first thing my chain is turned up for two brushes, turn on the light. They need to turn on the light independently 3 times before I move on to the next step. Okay, which now is turn on the light and go pick up the stool. Right? And now we're done. Versus backward chaining, as you can imagine, we start with the last step and we work our way back, right? So what's the last step? Brushing your teeth. In our example, it's probably turning the light back on. But again, we're starting there and then working our way back. Okay? Total task presentation is where we are giving someone an opportunity to engage in every single step of the task, every time that you do it. Okay? And the ultimate question again comes back to why. So I hold up front to forward chaining and backward chaining, and most at least, and I'm not really poking fun at those. I don't want you to think that I am. Those are legit ways of teaching these skills. And if they weren't legit ways of teaching those skills, they wouldn't be up here, they wouldn't be in your tests. People wouldn't be using them. People do use them all the time, if they're needed. So it's about thinking about why. So maybe I'm using forward chaining because it's a really complex skill, and this person has trouble learning things using task analysis. I want to provide immediate reinforcement, okay? Maybe I'm using backward chaining for those same reasons, but because the ultimate response is something that's reinforcing for the person. So an awesome time to use backward chaining with someone who's a hard learner is using a vending machine. What's the last step of using a vending machine? Take your stuff out of the vending machine, right? Sweet. So I'm going to reach in and I'm going to pull out the Snickers bar. And that's pretty cool. That's reinforcing right there. I'm going to get it from there. Versus total task presentation. Maybe your rationale is I want something that's really efficient. I've got something that responds pretty well to task analysis methodology. There are 200,000 steps in my TA, so I think I can run through the whole thing. That's good. You know, whatever your rationale is. But again, very similar questions for the TA as there are for discrete trial methodology. And then I put one up for shaping. Shaping, we talked about in lecture as being reinforcing successful approximations towards some terminal behavior. So you get someone who's able to do something, but they aren't able to do it to the degree that you want them to do it, or it's a skill they don't have in the repertoire that they can do something that sort of kind of gets there. Like examples that I can think of is ultimately you want someone to be able to hit a baseball with a baseball bat, right? But that is not even close to happening, right? It's like 0%. Then maybe what you start out with is you throw a little beach ball out and then back into the thing. Okay, maybe that's something that's in somebody's repertoire. And then you think about, okay, how do I take somebody that can hit a beach ball with their hand and get them to be able to hit a baseball with a bat? Right? I can offer that person $1 million. $1 million. Strike one, strike two, strike three. It's not happening, right? Okay? But so it's not about motivation. It's about what can I teach them that's close to hitting the beach ball with their hand. It's a little bit closer to hitting the baseball with a baseball bat. You know, and maybe that you get a really like a racquetball racket. Just stick right up there close to your hand. And now hit the big beach ball with the racquetball racket. Now I'm just a little bit closer. And then I'm going to shrink the ball a little bit. Now maybe I go to a tennis racket. Maybe I go to one of those big old football bats. It's this big around. But just what are the different steps and getting closer and closer and closer. Or we can also think about it in terms of frequency or latency. Latency is a big one that I can think of. So somebody that just takes them a long time to respond. I think we talked about this in the data collection assignment, for you guys, right? That literacy might be important. That someone that says that you want to teach to say hi to someone, that's great that they can say hi. Hey, how's it going? Hi. That's great, but if it takes them a minute or 2 minutes to say hi back, the person that said how's it going to them is gone. Okay, the opportunity is lost. So you want to decrease that latency. But you can take a look at, okay, right now the latency is it takes them about a minute to say hi back. Maybe we just need to reinforce responses that occur 55 seconds or less, and then 50 seconds or less, and then 40 seconds or less. That's shaping too. Shaping to decrease the latency. Okay? Or we can think about amplitude. Somebody that talks really loud, really loud. How's it going? Okay, no one hears it. Might as well not happen, right? But just to say, you just need to speak up. That's not going to happen, right? So we think about just gradually increasing amplitude. So if you're looking to do shaping, think about what dimension you're trying to shape, what initial responses are already in the person's repertoire. Okay? And then what are the successive approximations in your shaping protocol? So let's think about for a second your neurotypical high school student. That you might think that a lot of the stuff you're talking about, that doesn't really apply. I can't really use this kind of stuff. But now you've got that student that consistently shows up late for class. Shape that. You know, you can try to just plain old reinforce it. Say, no, you got to be into class on time, and I'll give you a gold star for coming to class on time, because gold stars really motivate high school kids, right? We can think about, you know, I'm going to give you something for coming on time. And maybe for some students that is effective. Maybe other students, it's like, no, they're struggling with organization, maybe they need to go, it's just they're not getting there on time, they're consistently 5 minutes late. So you reinforce them for 4 minutes late. And then reinforce them for 3 minutes late. You just do gradual successive approximation towards your criminal behavior. There's a world of possibilities for things that you can shape. And we shape behavior all the time. Going back to Skinner, talking about verbal behavior. So, was Chomsky, any linguists in the room? So I'm not going to offend anybody. So like Chomsky, I think it was Chomsky talking about like the language acquisition device, right? This thing that's somewhere in your head, hypothetically, is sort of why everyone's able to get language, and there's got to be some commonality in everybody, but there's just this innate whatever that language flows from. Skinner talked about, no, it's really shaping. Is yes, babies tend to babble a little bit, right? And that babbling initially gets reinforced. Okay, it's like, oh, you're so cute, whatever like that. Makes it more likely to happen more, and that babbling starts to approximate things that are more similar to words. And as that starts to happen, that starts to reinforce more. Oh, he said dog, she did this, mama, dad, oh, it's like, oh, everyone's all jazzed up, and you provide reinforcement. And then as you provide reinforcement, you not intentionally, you start to reinforce more and more sophisticated language, okay? There are very few teenagers that do get reinforced for saying mama, dad, right? Some do, if that's where they are, if that's where they are from a language standpoint. But your typically developing high school student, it comes and says, or walks into the kitchen. If my son, who's 13 years old, walked into the kitchen, it was like ice cream. What the hell are you talking about? Seriously? You know, that's not going to be reinforced. But a 2-year-old or an 18-month-old, ice cream, oh yeah, sure, we're going to reinforce that response, okay? Because it's emerging verbal behavior. That's shaping. Shaping in virtually everything that we do. So you can choose shaping. And then the final one that you can think about is stimulus favor. Which oftentimes you confuse it with shaping. Whereas shaping, we're trying to change the person's behavior. We're successively modifying a person's behavior. With fading, we're modifying the stimulus that's presented. Okay, we're hoping to get a consistent response in the face of a changing stimulus. Okay, so where I can see this one coming in big time is for those of you as you're going through your essential for living and you're circling. I think they call it tolerating skills and eggshells. I mean, eggshells refers to people walking on eggshells around someone to not piss them off, right? But very often you get people that have that struggle to tolerate things. One that I'm working on right now is I've got a young man that I'm working with that really can't tolerate the sound of a hand dryer. Okay? And a family of boys going out to restaurants for fear that the kid's going to have to go to the bathroom while they're out in a restaurant. They're going to be in the bathroom, someone else is going to be in there, they're going to turn on the hand dryer, and there's going to be a major freak out in the bathroom of the restaurant. Okay? So, what do we do? How do we teach someone to be able to tolerate the noise of a hand dryer? And what we're doing in this case is stimulus SPED. YouTube is awesome. You can get anything on YouTube. So I can type in accelerator hand dryer, right? And I can get a 30-second video of someone blasting an accelerator hand dryer, right? And it's on the iPad, and I can turn the volume way, 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 way down and expose them to it, and then reinforce this young man for it when he successfully listens to the 30-second animation of problem behavior. And then I can crank the volume up a little bit, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And over the course of a month or 2 months, I can get into the front room and maybe think about trying to go into a restaurant and see what happens. Okay? So, fading. But we can use fading for academic targets as well. Anyone here use touch money or touch math? You, good. So, I think it's really cool. Although a quick search of it said that one of the issues people have is difficulty with an exit strategy, right? Is how you get away from it. But essentially, so let's go with touch money. So I've got my quarter here, right? I'm not going to draw on George Washington. I'll spare you all. Quarter's got 5 dots on it, right? We count by 5 as touch money. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Okay? And our dimes have 2 dots on them. And our nickels have 1 dot on them. Okay? So if I've got a quarter, a dime, and a nickel, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 40 cents. Okay? So it's a strategy for teaching money, and the same thing exists with math. Like we can do 5 minus 2, and forgive me if I put the touch points in the wrong place on the 2, but essentially there's like 2 touch points on the 2. And so if I want to do 5 minus 2 equals 5, 4, 3. The answer is 3, so I got 2 touch points. Boom, boom. Okay? But then how do we go about fading those touch points? Okay? And one of the things that I saw was like going from, if I've got my 2 with the big open dots, then I erase the big open dots and I make them solid dots on the end, which is a little bit closer to just being a 2. And then I get rid of the big solid dots, and then I just put like a little bit of a bulb on the end of the 2, and then eventually I get rid of that stuff altogether, right? And it's just a 2. And in theory, the student might still go 5, 4, 3 to get down there. And this is not a substitute for rote memorization, right? This is different than rote memorization. This is actually working through mathematical operations. But just a strategy for when we think about fading in that standpoint, it's a transfer of stimulus control. How do I get someone who's responding to an effective but inappropriate stimulus? Right, because those bulbs on the 2. They work, but they're not really appropriate. They're not going to be out there. They're not going to be. I was reading yesterday someone's critique on touch math was, good luck finding a grocery store with little dots on all the numbers, right, to be able to figure out how much something costs. True. So what's our strategy to go from the dots to having nothing? Okay, and generally it's going to be systematically fading. So with my hand dryer, it's going to be, I'm going from the volume in the iPad on 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. Again, not rocket science. I'm not looking for something big and complex. Just systematically, how are you going to get where you need to go? What's the roadmap for you? What is that for you? Okay. So again, essentially, for this assignment, what I'm looking for is for you to do that essential for living. You'll need to come up with 3 learning targets. Okay, either ideally based on the essential 8 quick assessment. If you can't get it from there, expanding a little bit. If you can't get it from there, going somewhere else, and then using those 3 learning targets, developing 3 programs using at least 2 of these strategies. Okay, so again, if you want to do 2 discrete trial, you can. If you want to do PTAs, you can. If you want to do 1 each, you can. That's fine.
There's actually a question that you have to do a different one for each
No.
target. Okay.
No, I prefer it if you didn't do all 3 using the same methodology, but if you want to do 2 using that, because again, I want this to be useful. So if the world that you live in is a world of response shaping, go ahead and make 2 response shaping. That's what's going to make the most sense for you. But I'd like you to use at least 2 just so you get a little bit of experience with the diversity of creating programs that way. So it's 10:30, and I'm a half hour over where I said I was going to be, and I'm not surprised. I'm going to stop my iPad and walk down the hallway and noodle around down there for a minute, and then come back here. And anybody that's still here that wants to go over stuff and have me help you with that, I'll hang out here up until noon if you want me to. If you choose not to, please enjoy the rest of your Veterans Day weekend. Please feel free to shoot me emails in the process as you work your way through the course. If you have any questions about any of the assignments, concerns, anything like that, I try to be very reachable via email, and I'm more than happy to help you guys along that. All right? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Is there a sign sheet?
There is no signage sheet now. Don't worry about it. The proof will be in the pudding if you're not here, right? You'll have no idea what we're doing for the assignment.